Even the greatest of men succumb to human nature. No matter if you are a king or a pauper, it seems we are all susceptible to our own vices. In this video, we will continue the examination of my favorite epic of all time, Mahabharat. It is truly the Indian Game of Thrones, pitting members of a dynastic family against each other in an epic struggle for power, dharma, and birthrights. We are going to look at two characters in particular, father and son, as a matter of fact. The king of truth himself, Yudhishthir, and his father, the great conqueror Pandu. Even though Pandu was not Yudhishthir's blood father, the child was considered a Pandava, a demigod, born to Pandu through a seduction mantra spoken by his queen, Kunti, and does not diminish the lineage. For those familiar with this epic, the Pandavas were locked in a lifelong battle with their cousin brothers, the Kauravas, the many sons of Pandu's blind, covetous brother Dhritarashtra. This caused to many vindictive situations where the brothers would antagonize each other, ultimately leading to the great war on the battlefield of Kurukshetra itself. It is a tale as old as time, where brothers and cousins from the same family come to blows over the throne because either their lineage or inheritance has come into question, and both sides feel the throne is their birthright. The Pandavas were said to be the epitome of Dharma and truth, great warriors, whose existence helped the people prosper. But their cousins the Kauravas, with the eldest brother Duryodhana, were spiteful, treacherous, and exemplified evil deeds in pursuit of the throne. Now that we have some of the backstory out of the way, let's look at a father and son who were considered the pinnacle of truth, dignity, and how a king should rule his people. But even with all this pomp, they were still given to the same vices and temptations we all are. Let's start with the father, King Pandu. He was the second born of 3 sons, and was considered frail and pale when he was a child, but then grew into a powerful conqueror and a ruler who his people admired and his enemies feared. He lived his life with the Dharma of the age, or the truth needed to lead the life of a decent man, respecting traditions along with the knowledge to rule effectively. One day, Pandu was out hunting, and this is where fate and disaster meet his family. He sees and hears what he believes to be deer in the forest, and being an ace archer himself, knew he could take the deer in whatever precarious position they may be in. He knocked his arrow onto his bow and let loose. The arrow hit its mark, maybe too perfectly. He then hears blood-curdling screams and is shocked to discover what he has done. He finds the human bodies of Rishi Kingdom and his wife in the throes of passion. The two were in the form of deer, and anyone who is familiar with these tales knows that sages had many powers that revolved around being one with nature, giving them different illusory and physical powers over the physical and spiritual worlds. Pandu is grief-stricken and panicked because Rishi Kingdom was close to him and offered the sagely advice that kept the king on the path of Dharma. He is standing over the dying sage, horrified as Kingdom remains intertwined with his wife. With his dying breath, the sage curses Pandu in what could be the worst possible curse for a virile man. He lays a powerful curse, letting it be known that if Pandu ever again lays hands on either of his wives with romantic intent, he will drop dead on the spot. So any type of sexual desire towards his wives Kunti or the renowned beauty Madri, he would die, just like the sage did in the act itself. What a curse, right? I mean, for a king, nothing could be worse than having the ability to have sons be taken away in an instant. This is why Pandu asks his queen to use her sacred mantra to call upon their chosen gods and bestow them with sons, so he could still be a father and pass on his line, without succumbing to the curse of Rishi Kingdom. After these killings, whether by accident or not, Pandu knew he had to atone. Most kings in ancient times would never do what Pandu does. They would simply chop it up to the game of being at the wrong place at the right time. And what is anyone going to do about it? But Pandu is a king of Dharma. He is a man who believes in karma and does not want his soul to burn, along with his condemned sexual desires. So he announces to the royal court that he must go into exile and do severe, austere penance to atone for this horrendous sin. His loyal wives, his queens, would not let him go alone, so they accompanied him to the forest where he would begin his exile. This is where the epic shows how fate pulls the strings on all of us, because he leaves the throne to his blind brother Dhritarashtra, cementing the battle of Mahabharat, along with throwing the family into future turmoil without even knowing it. So following these events, Pandu is now in the forest with his 2 wives, and he fathers the Pandavas through Queen Kunti's mantra, thus becoming a father without breaking the curse. He is performing penance daily and doing his best to atone for his sins. This is the whole point here. A king with this much power and respect, giving up everything because he killed a sage who had no earthly possessions, is simply an example of the most humble, truthful, justice-seeking man. Most kings would never renounce their thrones over this, and would fight tooth and nail anyone who would challenge them. Is Pandu just a sucker? Is he weak? If anything, he is an example of how one goes against human nature and vice, gives up all his power and everything he has conquered, and hits the forest to live off the land. That would all be true, but even with all this, the point takes, Pandu is still just a man, and I hate to say it, but men truly only think about one thing, most of the time. He resisted for so long, built up his spiritual prowess by practicing hardcore retention, and if you are a man in the modern age, I am sure you have heard by now the tales of retention and how you somehow achieve superpowers from it. Or that is what they claim, I guess. Poor Pandu is finishing up his salutations for the day, wrapping up his meditative state, when he catches a glimpse that rocked him to his core. He sees his beautiful wife Madri showering in the waterfall near him. There it is, all the vaunted prowess of a man with his honor and self-control simply go out the window, and I cannot blame him. This man gives in to what the downfall of man has been for so long. He tries to embrace Madri because he cannot take it any longer, and what happens? He dies on the spot. Rishi Kingdom was not playing. He dropped a curse, and Pandu succumbed to a woman's allure. Of course, Madri wants to commit suicide after this tragedy because she feels responsible for her king's death, but the deed has been done. This is a major event in the epic tale, because the death of Pandu cements the Kaurava's birthright to the throne, because he was not alive long enough to return and pass it on. So with all this, a man such as Pandu, a king of kings, the ideal man with a code of honor, strips himself of his throne and goes into exile, but could not fight human nature. He could not fight the urge that is in all creatures on this planet. He was so taken by that hardcore drive that he forgot about the curse or did not care if he tested it. Well, F around and find out. But who could blame him, right? So the next time you want to be hard on yourself for ruining your no-fap November when you see your girlfriend, don't be, because if a king like Pandu failed in this endeavor, what chance do we normal men have? All jokes aside, it is a hidden lesson that human beings are so driven by our urges and vices that we simply cannot fear the consequences sometimes because we are willing to test them in order to satiate our needs. So powerful is the attraction towards the opposite sex in all creatures that some species will travel untold distances just to find a mate for a few hours, then die right after. Lust, the great killer of kings, right? Now that we have harangued the father, let's try the son. Yudhishthir was 10 times the king his father was. In fact, he was known as the emperor of truth and Dharma. It makes sense because Yudhishthir was technically a demigod born to Yama, the god of truth and/or death, because death is the ultimate truth of life. So this man had a lot riding on him. He was always the pinnacle of truth and light, leading his brothers on the path of righteousness, not letting them err. If anyone would wrong him or his brothers, no matter what it was, this man would almost always turn the other cheek to forgive, annoying his brothers and pinning him down to discussions of ethics and dharma instead of fighting. He tried everything to avoid the battle of Mahabharat, even trying to forgive his cousin brothers, the Kauravas, for all their sins, even though those sins included attempted murder on multiple levels, deceit in all forms, and causing them pain, misery, and exile their whole lives. I believe if Yudhishthir was not ultimately pressured by his brothers and Krishna, he would have still sued for peace with Duryodhana instead of war. So, we now know that this was a man who was infallible when it came to the truth and could not be tempted into leading a life of vice and deceit. Although he still kept to his truth, he fell victim to a vice that has been plaguing mankind for millennia: gambling. This is another twist of fate in this epic that sets the stage for massacre. Let me paint the picture for you. Yudhishthir was a horrible dice player, but every single warrior in the cast took the game of dice very seriously. It was either war or dice. There was no in between, and there was no backing down from either. If someone challenged or offered a game of dice, your warrior pride could not refuse, lest you be thought of as a coward, shaming the caste. The maternal uncle of Duryodhana, named Shakuni, was a master of dice. He used a set of occult dice made from the bones of his dead father, and these dice ensured his victory whenever he played. You knew Shakuni was coming when you heard the clacking of the dice in his hands. He was a very treacherous, sneaky, and politically savvy individual and knew everything about his enemies. He had a deep hatred for the Pandavas and believed the throne belonged to his nephews and would not leave the kingdom of Hastinapur for his native Gandhar until they achieved their birthrights. He knew Yudhishthir was a horrible gambler, but played with such confidence. It was akin to that one poker player at the table with his dark glasses who thinks he is unbeatable, but is really showing every tell in the book. Shakuni invited the Pandavas to a game of dice at the palace in front of the whole court. Of course, Yudhishthir could not refuse. His warrior code and lust for gambling would not let him. This man, the Emperor of Truth, the infallible son of Dharma himself, ends up doing the unthinkable. Roll after roll, the treacherous Shakuni's loaded dice do their job, winning piece by piece. Yudhishthir begins wagering all his gold, then his chariots, then his elephants, and so on, until he has wagered all of his wealth. His face drenched in a cold sweat, he tried to win back what he has lost, as is the telltale tick of a compulsive gambler. A part of me, though, understands that it is very difficult for a man to stop at this point. Being a student of psychology, it comes down to personality, and if you have a bit of OCD, you simply cannot let it go until you even out both sides. This man ends up staking all of his brothers, effectively turning them into slaves. He then stakes himself as well, losing his crown, all he has been given and fought for. But the worst scene is when he stakes his wife Draupadi. She is known as the most beautiful woman of the times, and Duryodhana absolutely hates her, but also covets her like any other man. This leads to a horrific scene where she is dragged to the court after being in seclusion because it was that time of the month, and she was splayed out for all the court to see. Her attempted disrobing failed because Krishna came to her rescue and made it impossible to reach the end of her clothing. The Pandavas are all pale white and absolutely furious at this point, while all the strong vaunted elders in the court sit in silence. Even grandsire Bhishma, the strongest, eldest Kuru, sits in silence, emotionally struck being tied to the throne, breaks his sword with his bare hands out of frustration. The brothers are eventually given back all they had lost by the blind king. It took Draupadi scolding all the elders and shaming the king into giving back what was lost. The daughter-in-law was a very sacred family position in ancient India because they have left their own family to join a new one, thus becoming the pride and joy, seen as a daughter. She worked her magic and got her gambling husband's possessions back for him. Now, after all of this, you would think Yudhishthir would have learned his lesson and abstained from dice for the rest of his life, but I cannot believe what happens. This man is still stuck on adhering to Dharma that when Shakuni invites him a second time for another game, he says, "Of course, my honor demands I play. I cannot refuse." So once again he is put in the fire, but this time there are some parameters in place to keep him in check. It still does not matter. Shakuni, being the devious genius he was, concocts a plan to get rid of the Pandavas for the time being, allowing Duryodhana a chance to solidify his nefarious. The stakes of the second game were as follows. The loser of the game would have to go into exile for 12 years and spend the 13th year in anonymity, and if they were discovered in the final year, they would have to start all over again, going into exile for another 12 years. What a great way to remove your rivals without killing them. I bet you can figure out what happened here, right? The King of Truth ends up losing. Shakuni's skill comes through, and the Pandavas are stuck with their fate. And for the second time, the brothers leave with their heads low, pride destroyed, and apprehensive about their exile to the forest. I chose to examine these two characters because I find it quite remarkable that a father and son, whether blood or not, can go down paths that change the fates of everyone around them. We can see two different sides of human frailty with this. We can see human nature when Pandu gives into lust, and the vice-ridden mind of Yudhishthir when he loses at dice, not just once, but twice, having to get bailed out by those around him. This is in no way a judgment of these men, because we do not do that here. It is simply an exposition of what human beings do best, put ourselves in a tight spot with our own biologically determined behavior. Lust and vice. One is spurned on by the drives of the natural world, and the other is spurned on by the drives of human life. but both had tragic outcomes in this case. Not only did these kings' behaviors affect them, but it also affected thousands upon thousands of innocent people. These events, unbeknownst to them at the time, would seal their fate, leading to the Battle of Mahabharat, where untold amounts of people would die in battle and by association. When you are responsible for the lives of others, you cannot be so cavalier about things like most people would be. You must be held to the highest standard, and that is what I find mind-blowing about this. These are two kings, with pedigrees so vaunted they put gods to shame. But in the end, human nature is so damn strong that none among us, or above us, are immune to its siren song. So remember, the next time you feel the urge to hit the tables or choose a girl over fate, think about these legendary kings and pray, because honestly, we don't stand a chance. Do we?